Hello and blessings, my beautiful souls. My name is Avalon Cameron and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about how to use a pendulum. So if you would like to learn how to use a pendulum confidently and competently, then keep on watching and be sure to hit that subscriber button and the little notification bell so that you can be notified when I post new videos. So let's get stuck into this video. Let's start off with what is a pendulum. A pendulum is a solid object that is attached to a fixed point that can swing vertically, horizontally, clockwise and anti-clockwise under the influence of gravity. In mysticism, witchcraft and magic, a pendulum is a tool for dowsing and divination. You can use a pendulum to heal. You can use a pendulum to connect with the divine or to commune with spirits. And you can use a pendulum to seek out obscure truths and or find hidden objects. This is perhaps one of my favorite ways to use a pendulum, is to find a lost object. But pendulums are fantastic for healing, as I've previously stated, and they can be really wonderful tools for allowing you to connect with your intuition and to commune with that divine realm or the higher realm. This could also mean your guides, your guardians, your ancestors, your angels. Let's now look at the anatomy of a pendulum. A pendulum, in essence, is a very simple magical tool. It consists of three parts. That is the bob, which is the solid object, the string, chain, or connecting thread, and the fob, which is exactly what you hold onto when you are using a pendulum. So altogether you have a bob, the thread, and a fob. So we've talked about the anatomy of a pendulum. Now I would like to talk about what pendulums are typically made of. Now, because the pendulum is such a simple tool, it can be made out of just about anything. I have seen pendulums be made out of a wedding band and a strand of hair to divine the gender of a baby while still in the womb. I found this to be rather fascinating. But in truth, pendulums can be made out of metal, they can be made out of wood, glass, they can be made out of bone and crystal. Crystal pendulums are very, very popular, and they can also be made out of solid objects of nature such as seeds and shells and things of the sort. So a pendulum really can be made of just about anything, and I find that pendulums that are made from natural materials hold an ashare, hold an essence or a chi, an energy and a magic that is sacred to that particular botanical or natural material that you have chosen. Okay, so how does a pendulum work? This is a very good question and one worth addressing, and there are many answers to this question, so I'm presenting you with mine. This is how I see a pendulum working. Because I see a pendulum as a bridge to our higher realms, our unconscious minds, the pendulum then becomes a type of antenna, to be perfectly honest. When we are holding on to a pendulum, when we are grounded and centered, we engage our other senses. When we are in that moment of in-between, that moment of clarity, and we have truly stimulated our intuition, which is what typically happens when we work with a tool for divination. What happens is our outer realms, our higher self, our unconscious minds, our gods, our guides, our guardians, our ancestors can communicate with us through that pendulum in the form of yes and no forms of communication, responses, etc. And so the way that happens is the energy, the wisdom, the information travels down through our beautiful humanistic nervous system and into the tiny little nerve endings in our hands, and that causes these tiny little pulses of energy to occur, in which case that is the moving aspect of the pendulum. These tiny little pulses allow the pendulum to pulse and move and accept that information, and that causes the pendulum to begin moving and to begin swirling and doing those beautiful things. So these little shifts, these little pulses of energy come from the ether, come from that higher place. And when we are open in those moments, we can actively also engage our psychic hearing, our clairaudience. you may feel the energy coming through. You may feel that energy coursing through you into your nerve endings, and you may also find that that energy makes its way into the language system of your mind, and you begin to hear words and thoughts forming. The pendulum and your clairaudience in that instance can work in tandem or in conjunction one with the other to provide a much more powerful and intense reading. The pendulum doesn't just provide space for your clairaudience, it can provide space for a variety of your clairs to come through. But it is that beautiful tool, that conductive tool, if you will, like an antenna, that is allowing you to channel information into the tip of that pendulum, the fob, and make that pendulum react magically to your questions. That is how I like to describe how a pendulum works, and I hope that you have found that particular explanation somewhat satisfying. Alright, so let's next look at how to use a pendulum. This is the crux, this is the good stuff, okay folks? This is where we want to be. We want to know how to effectively use that pendulum. Now, the best way to learn to use your pendulum, or to start using your pendulum, is by understanding that posture is everything. So elbow on a solid, unmoving surface, holding that pendulum from the fob. Okay, so a pendulum is not the type of tool that you are going to want to use in a moving environment. No planes, boats, cars, caravans, or any other moving environment that I haven't even thought of. So pendulums need that opportunity to become still and fixed, okay? Once you have assumed the position, what you then do is you ground and you center. You set that solid intention. Once you have grounded and centered, opened yourself up to your guides, your guardians, your ancestors, your higher self, what you then do is you begin to determine your yes and no directions. Okay, so a pendulum, as I've previously stated, can swing vertically, horizontally, clockwise, or anti-clockwise. And so understanding what yes and no is for your pendulum will enable you to effectively use your pendulum, because that is what it's all about. So there are a few ways that you can do this. One of the most straightforward ways is to ask your pendulum to show you a yes and show you a no. Another way for you to determine the yes and no directions of your pendulum is to ask your pendulum questions that you know the answer to. For instance, ask your pendulum a question where you are quite certain that the answer is a yes and or a no. So something personal, something that is yours, a secret perhaps. This is said to help to really attune the pendulum to your own personal language, and there's something quite fun about that. So give that a go, and always remember that you don't have to say these things out loud, okay? So you don't have to be in a room in front of another person whispering your secrets to determine the yes and no directions of your pendulum. You can do this in your mind. You can ground, center, close your eyes. In the midst of 1,000 different people, you can still do this and connect with your pendulum by asking that pendulum to show you the yes and no. Either way that you choose to determine those yes and no's is entirely personal and up to you. Alright, so let's now look at ways in which you can get the absolute most out of your pendulum. First and foremost, I want you to understand that your pendulum is a tool, first and foremost, a divinatory, magical tool. As such, looking after that tool is very important. We begin with common sense measures, okay? So keep your pendulum clean, keep it tidy, keep it out of prying hands and away from prying eyes. Don't let too many people touch your pendulum. Don't let anyone, if you can help it, touch your pendulum, okay? Because there is such a thing as transference of energy, and when you are trying to bond with something, having somebody else come in there and transfer their energy onto your pendulum does disturb that bonding process. If you have a metal pendulum, then looking after that pendulum is important. Keeping it free of tarnish and rust is essential. If you have a wooden pendulum, then keeping it sanded, well polished, varnished, etc. is also important. And you may want to anoint your wooden pendulums. You can anoint all of your pendulums, of course, but wooden pendulums tend to respond to that beautiful condition oil a lot better, I find, because it has that porous nature about it, such as the nature of wood. If you have bone, seeds, or shells, know that these are more delicate types of natural materials that can break and chip, and some can even decompose. So keep that in mind when choosing the materials in which to make your pendulum. Next, I would encourage you to cleanse and consecrate your pendulum. By cleansing and consecrating your pendulum, you are deeming that pendulum as a sacred object. You are saying to the world around you, to the beautiful universal world of spirits, that tool, that beautiful pendulum, is sacred to you and will be used in a sacred or divine manner. Consecrating and cleansing your pendulum is also good because the cleansing process removes unwanted energy from your pendulum. This could be considered energetic debris. And if you have bought your pendulum, for instance, then this is a really good idea because it removes energetic imprints that others may have placed on that pendulum. If you are using sensitive materials such as bone, and you don't know where that bone has come from, then cleansing becomes a logical choice because you don't know if there was any trauma there. And so learning to cleanse your magical tools becomes a really good idea and a very common sense process at the end of the day when you really think about it. So cleansing and consecrating. One of the best ways to cleanse and consecrate is through smoke, through intention, obviously, through breath, breathing on your beautiful pendulums. That life force, that breath is incredibly sacred in its own way. If you are working with metal, wood, and well, any other pendulum, if you're working with any pendulum, you can anoint your pendulums with magical or condition oils. Of the various magical and condition oils, I would recommend abramelin, which is typically used for anointing ritual tools, amongst other uses, of course. And so you may also want to work with something like black cat oil to ensure that when you are using your pendulum that you're kind of flying under the radar, that no one's paying too much attention to you, know what I mean? This allows you to practice your art of divination with pendulum in places that others might not dare to. So I feel like I should say a little something about crystal pendulums, because I personally believe that crystal pendulums are the most popular pendulums right at the minute, right? So it may not have been the most popular pendulum in the past, nor might crystal pendulums be the most popular pendulums in the future, but for the right now, they are the most popular. It is what I see the most around me. It's what I see the most in stores, online, and what I myself possess the most of. So when it comes to crystal pendulums, it's important to understand that crystals have their own magic, their own attributes, their own life force, and their own desires, so to speak. So if you, for instance, are on the hunt for a pendulum that you can use as a bit of an all-rounder, something that you can carry around with you and whip out at any given point and use in any situation, then going for a crystal that is perhaps attuned to love, such as rose quartz or rhodochrosite or another love attuned stone, may not be the best decision for you, as it will definitely affect the outcome of your divinations with pendulum. So understanding the attributes of crystals is important, especially when it comes to the application. So if you are doing a little divining for matters of the heart, for instance, then using a beautiful love-attuned stone becomes a logical choice. And so taking those things into consideration, it can be very helpful when learning to use your pendulum or looking to attune more with your pendulum. Crystal pendulums also enjoy being cleansed in a wide variety of ways. There are some crystals that can be placed in salt and some that you just simply wouldn't put in salt because they are very soft. They have a very soft Mohs hardness. Typically, I like to put quartz-based crystals in salt baths, so to speak, with oils and botanicals, and leave them there for extended periods of time to really cleanse so that I can get the most out of my work with those pendulums. That is what I like to do when I have a good knowledge of those stones. And having a good knowledge of your stones will help you to determine the best way to cleanse your stone. There are stones that cannot be placed under water. They are water soluble, or they become toxic when entered in contact with water. And so you can't necessarily put every stone under running water, even though water is a really beautiful, elementally charged way in which to cleanse a stone. So one of my favorite ways to cleanse a stone is with incense, with smoke, with holy wood. Now you can use sage and you can use holy wood, but of course keep in mind that sage at the moment is being absolutely beaten down, if you know what I mean. So many people are buying and using sage, and sage plants have become depleted somewhat. Likewise, Palo Santo. If you cannot find an ethical source for your Palo Santo, then it's best to omit that Palo Santo altogether. And so when you are looking to smoke cleanse, pay particular attention to the materials that will comprise that smoke. I really love working with frankincense resin. There is something nostalgic and so divinely sacred about the smell of frankincense. It is a tactile thing. It literally overtakes me. I love it. Likewise, Palo Santo. It comes from my neck of the woods, and therefore it is nostalgic to me as well. But here it is easier to get frankincense. You can also substitute frankincense with rosemary, which is a very popular and easily accessible culinary herb. And so looking at ways in which you can create really beautiful incenses for the purpose of cleansing can be really, really good. Working with rosemary is fantastic. If you're in a pinch, just use rosemary. Rosemary is cleansing, it's protective, it engages the memory, it has a clearing energy to it. It's such a solid, hearty kind of a botanical, and that translates through the smoke cleanse. And I particularly love to work with rosemary for exactly that reason, because it packs a punch. It is robust. So once you have cleansed and consecrated your crystal pendulums, then it is necessary for you to program your crystal pendulums. And this is essentially telling that crystal pendulum exactly what it is, the function it will have, the intention that you have for that crystal pendulum. Programming crystals is a beautiful and necessary process that we must all try to get the absolute most out of, because crystals have a beautiful, brilliant life force and require that guidance in order to be the best use possible for you. So in order to get the most out of any crystal work that you do, cleansing, consecrating, and programming your stones is that three-part process that is paramount to working with stones, full stop. It's also important to keep your stones charged. And you can do this by continuously breathing on your stone, adding a little bit of a little smoke, a little something to that stone as well, or placing your stone on another stone. So one of the things that I personally like to do is place my crystal pendulums on top of amethyst clusters, which are very, very good. Carnelian is also a stone that can help to charge, empower, and cleanse other stones. So learning which stones do what in that capacity can be really fun. And I find that since amethyst is a very popular stone and lots of people know about the magic of amethyst, finding amethyst clusters are not that difficult. You may already have one. But have a look at ways in which you can utilize the crystals that are already in your home in order to empower and continuously charge your pendulum, because above all else, it's important for you to use what you already have. Okay, so we've reached the part of this video where we're going to engage in a little bit of a pendulum exercise. So for this, you are going to need a piece of paper, a pen, and a pendulum. Okay, so this little exercise is designed to help you find a lost item. So I am going to give you an example of a particular lost item hunt that we went on utilizing this particular pendulum right here just the other day in order to find a lost Lego figurine. Don't ask, folks, it happened. We've gotten over it. So you begin by drafting up or drawing out the space in which the item has been lost. In this instance, the area in which the little Lego figurine was lost was inside my home. So I'm going to do a loose, imperfect sketch of my home, like so. Let's do a little sunroom area out here. Now my home is typically, you know, parted. There's a little walkway here, little door there. And so here is the kitchen. Here is the area that I have my table. Here is the fireplace. Here's my reading corner. Here's a little cupboard in the corner over there. The constant Christmas tree is there, and this area is pretty spaced out. Then we have a bit of a cupboard over here. We have some shelves over here in the bedroom. We have the kids' sleeping area. We have my bed just there. So I go by drawing out all of the major points in my home, everything that is in there that might obscure views. So once you have drawn out everything substantial within your home, the little architecture of your space, so that you know where to look, and if you have more rooms, this is going to be a little bit more time consuming, but I live in a tiny home with only 2 rooms, so this is a much easier process for me. You then grab your pendulum, breathe on it to give it a little activation, brace the elbow like so, and begin the process by asking the yes and no question. So for the purpose of this little exercise, I'm going to be very obvious about this. So beautiful pendulum, show me a yes. We have a clockwise, circular direction for yes. Beautiful pendulum, show me a no. We have a vertical back and forth no. So I know that my pendulum is showing me yes by going clockwise in a circular fashion, and no by going vertically like so. So then it's a process of elimination. Is the Lego figurine in the bedroom? No. Is the Lego figurine in the kitchen / main area? So we know that it's in the kitchen. Is the Lego figurine close to the dining table? No. Is the Lego figurine close to my reading corner? Yes. So I know to go over here and then get a little bit more specific. Since I have a very small space, there's no way for me to be ultra specific because my reading corner is very easy to see and you can see all around it. And incidentally, that's exactly where the Lego is at the moment, in my reading corner, which I'm not that happy about, folks. So this is a very simple exercise that you can replicate for any particular occasion. So let's say you've lost something in the office, you can still do this very thing. Let's say you've lost something outside on a beach. I mean, it's harder, but it can still be done by drawing out the area of the beach and making little quadrants, so to speak. It is much more time consuming depending on personal circumstances, but all in all, this is a really fun and easy, simple way to engage the use of your pendulum. It's also really fun to include kids in this process because they think it is absolutely astounding how the pendulum is going to find their lost item. My son went ballistic when we found that Lego doll. It was absolutely adorable. Well, my beautiful souls, we've reached the end of this video. I hope that you have enjoyed it. Please do let me know what your biggest takeaway has been throughout this video. I'm excited to chat with you about it. Please do leave your comments in the comments section below so we can start a little dialogue and build this lovely little community. And be sure to give this one a thumbs up, share it around if you know of anyone who would benefit from this video. And in the meantime, I'm sending you so much love, luck, peace, and joy. Do take care of yourselves, and I will chat to you again soon. Mwah.